decided, because it was obvious that whatever happened during the war, if they did survive, Judy wanted to emigrate to Australia probably, because the emigration to America was quite difficult. So she prevailed on a friend of her father's who had a handbag shop, and was also the head of the handbag guild. So she started to study. Now, studying it for a craft in those days and in Budapest necessitated the guild, entering the guild system, which was you entered one of the few shops that accepted you, and at that time it was a craft that was mainly, almost completely men. There were no women working at it, and those men who did study it were generally handicapped. They preferred to sit at a table and so on and do their work, and that way their handicaps were not, did not keep them from being successfully employed. So Judy was the first woman in the handbag system, and she was first an apprentice, then she became a journeyman, and with proper amount of time she became a master. So she really knew everything about a handbag, from making the patterns to sewing, to putting it together, framing it, and skiving the leather, because leather in handbags has to be thinned at the edges so it can be turned over. Otherwise you would have a raw edge around every piece of leather. So she did that, and she did that successfully. And here we have a young woman, if she survived, was able to go forth into almost any country and practice a trade. Her sister chose to be not a cook, but a pastry chef. And she studied that craft, and she also became a successful pastry chef at the time. That was a situation that made her study chemistry in England. She actually wasn't studying chemistry at the time. She was trying to pass the entry exams to King's College in London.
It was also very interesting because Judy and her family were confined to what was considered a Jewish ghetto in Budapest, and getting a little stir-crazy, she and her family went out for a walk one day, and her father was arrested by, I guess they were like Gestapo agents, and sent to a Nazi labor camp to build anti-tank trenches to help slow down or prevent the onslaught of Soviet tanks, which were making headway into Hungary towards the end of World War II. And Judith was able, with a friend, to get her father released from that labor camp. And I think that's an interesting story that maybe you should tell them.
The girl that she was with us at the Jewish Center, which was part of the, that was the main thing to.
It was a sort of a holding point.
A holding point.
Yeah.
So because we were very much afraid that we would be deported if we were gathered into that place where they gathered people, Jews,
And why don't you explain how you were able to get a falsified document, a Swiss pass, to get your father from the labor camp?
The Swiss pass we got from my friend had an uncle who worked at the Swiss legation, and he helped us get the pass for my father.
And what they were able to deliver the pass to the labor camp, and the commandant had to release Judy's father. But then a friend of Judy's, who lived in the same building as her family, discovered that the pass was typed on an Olympia typewriter, and they were able to type after Judy's father's name and family, in effect thus conferring a diplomatic immunity on her entire family, which helped to protect them for the balance of the war. But Judy and Gus met. Gus was a GI, and they met on the street in Budapest after the war, and he courted her. They were both in love with opera and soon in love with each other, and they came to New York on what was called a bride ship, which was a ship that brought European women who were married to American GIs to the United States. And Gus and Judy first settled into the Bronx. And what you tried to get a job when you first got here?
I tried to get a job when I first got here. And Gus had a distant relative who was part of a company that made handbags, and I went there, and of course I only knew how to handle a foot treadmill machine, sewing machine, and they put me on the sewing machine, and I couldn't do the electric sewing machine. I didn't know how it went, so I got fired. For that, I went to the Handbag Association, whose president was a Mr. Berkowitz at that time, and he had a son who worked for a cheap house on 33rd Street, which made comparatively simple bags, and he told me I should go up there, and I got $45 a week to work there. And while I worked there, there was a sewing machine operator there who said, well, this is not for you, this is too cheap a company. Go to the union and talk to the president and see what he can do for you. So I went there, and the man's name was Mr. Lubiner, and he said to me, I'll send you to Letty Rosenstein, see if you can stay there, if you can make it. I said, you just send me up there, don't you worry, I can do everything. And I went there, and I became the assistant to the pattern maker. And he got sick after a while, and I got the job as a full in charge of making patterns, and I even helped direct the companies. At the end, I even became the foreman, because for a long time they had a foreman in the factory, and there were changes, you know, there was one guy, and then after that there was another, and at one point there was a very wonderful man, his name was Stromowitz was a very, very nice fellow, and he loved me, and I loved him. He was such a nice guy, but he could only write in Yiddish. He didn't know how to write in English or how. But he was a very good speaker, and he used to run the factory, and I made the patterns. And after we went into business, he used to come to the factory and tell me how I should run it. You go over to this guy, you tell him to do this and that, you walk away, and then you come back after a while and see how he's doing. After that, though, we had the best foreman that we had was Al Schwab. He was a German who came to America as a young man, and he worked for a very good company,